Hey, welcome back to the Abundant OD, a show where we have real conversations with independent optometry practice owners and industry experts about building profitable, sustainable practices without burning out or sacrificing your personal lifestyle. I am on a mission to help practice owners create more predictable cash flow, keep more of what they earn through smart tax strategy, and actually enjoy the freedom they went into business for. And today, I'm excited to have Dr. Rana Taji with us. Dr. Taji is the owner and medical director of Toronto Medical Eye Associates in North York, Ontario. She's a lecturer offering subject matter expertise on dry eye disease, and she also partakes in multiple pharmaceutical projects, serves as an adjunct faculty clinical supervisor for student doctors from US and Canadian optometry schools, and she's done multiple conference presentations, participated in publications, and done extensive lecturing, and she has a keen focus and passion for dry eye disease and management. So Raina, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule here at the end of your day to talk with me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's start off. I always like to start off and find out a little bit about people's background and how they began their journey into optometry and then into independent optometry, becoming a practice owner. So was this like the career path you've always envisioned since you were a little kid, or how did you get into the profession?
Essentially, since I was 13, actually. So it
Yeah.
started off as a trip to the doctor, to the eye doctor. My aunt was picking me up from school. She peered into the classroom, noticed that I was sitting too close, holding my materials, and said, "Off to the eye doctor we go." And I was very nervous, didn't understand what that meant. And basically got there, and the doctor was very empathetic and understanding and went through all the motions of explaining everything that he was doing and explained why it is that I needed glasses. And
Mhm.
essentially, I ended up walking away with this feeling of, wow, I want to make someone feel like that one day. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to be able to be treated like an adult, even as a little kid, and to be explained everything and to feel good about that experience. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we go to doctor's offices and we're so scared, right? So to be able
Yeah.
to have a great experience. And it just stuck. And
Nice.
then as I went through and got accepted into optometry school, I didn't really understand which avenue I was going to end up taking, which is why I think clinical rotations are fantastic, not only in gaining experience, but then it helps you decide what type of modality you want to practice in. And I was at a ODMD clinic for one of my rotations. And I just remember thinking, my goodness, what a fabulous modality where we have this interdisciplinary approach. We co-manage, we have other specialties. I am part of an entire bodily system. Everything's interconnected, intertwined. And this focus on medical eye disease was just, it ignited this passion. And so that's where I ended up following afterwards. I worked in a large ODMD office in Northern Virginia for several years before moving back to Canada.
Okay.
And I continued that passion and recognized that one of the things that I wanted was the autonomy to make my vision come to life.
Mm.
And that's where the passion for entering independent practice came to be. And then I ended up
Okay.
finding my clinic and I purchased it, rewired it, and revamped it into continuing the focus on medical eye care. But then the specialty of dry eye disease was born from the clinic itself. And
Mhm.
that's where I am today.
Awesome. I think you're very fortunate to have been able to pick that out and have it stick at such a relatively early age. I share a similar path in my own. I took an elective when I was like 15 or 16 and just kept on the accounting path and ended up sticking with it, obviously. But I just know that so many people get into their chosen profession a number of different ways. So I find us fortunate that our first love, if you will, of a long-term career option actually worked out, right? Because a lot of folks think they know what they're going to do, but then they get into it and it's nope. So very fortunate, very cool. So you talked about getting into practice ownership to help see your own vision through, which I think is pretty common among a lot of folks I talk to. Why didn't you just go work for somebody else? So talk to us a little bit about that vision. Are there any specifics you can share about the vision you have for your practice moving forward?
So, what I wanted is I loved the approach that ophthalmology clinics had in terms of being able to be very comprehensive when it
Mhm.
came to seeing patients, but still being able to deliver quality of care while seeing a high volume of patients. So on the medical side, I kept that going. I actually purchased my clinic from a retiring ophthalmologist. The workings and culture of the clinic were still very much intertwined with that. I think one thing that optometry practices get wrong and fall short is that we do too much as eye doctors and we don't really prioritize what is important in an eye exam and the sequence of how to empower others within our office to do things so that we can do the more important stuff, whether it's detecting the disease, but also having the conversations. So oftentimes I tell people I spend very little in terms of examining a patient, but then it's the time that I spent communicating to the patient, which is what
Mhm.
drives the conversion of, let's say, moving towards getting dry eye treatments, purchasing retail therapies, considering further different regimens or treatments or referrals, let's say for myopia control or specialty contact lenses or whatnot. So it's the communication piece that drives the conversion. And so
Mhm.
when you, let's say, delegate ancillary testing, having your technician review of systems, having your technician update medications, checking vision, pressure, case history, that sort of thing. And then you
Mhm.
are left for, let's say, doing the anterior posterior segment and then having the discussion bit, and you're focusing a lot of time on the communication. The communication piece is one of the most important parts, and a lot of people tend to fall short on how to discuss things.
Mhm.
Wording, verbiage are very difficult for us to wrap our mind in terms of what wording do we use to properly deliver the message, but then also taking the time to deliver that. So when we're spending so much time examining and then we're realizing, oh my God, I'm running behind. And so we cut the patient education portion out. And when you do that, then you cut the percentage of ability for you to be able to convert that patient. And let's say it's a dispensing practice. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have time to talk to them about lens designs and progressives and multiple pairs, or the importance of a specific type of UV protection in terms of sunglasses and so forth. So it's the communication piece that I think needs to be spent the most time on in an exam.
Yeah.
And so I found that ophthalmology did it great with empowering technicians to do a significant amount of ancillary testing. And then leaving the doctor part for a short bit of time where you spend less than 3 to 5 minutes really examining the patient. And then I
Mhm.
spend the majority of the time patient educating. So my exam slots are anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. And I typically spend at least 7 to 10 minutes talking to each patient. And that's where I feel like that has been able to allow me to drive the revenue per patient. So when I see 22 patients in a day and I'm spending about 10 to 15 minutes with each patient, now my revenue per patient is increasing because this patient is walking away with scheduling treatments for dry eyes, purchasing dry eye products, considering at home red light therapy devices that we have in the office and whatnot. And that revenue
Mhm.
per patient increase is allowing me then to work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, I really hear that for sure because that's been the basis of a lot of conversations I've had over the years where it's like the doctors wanted to expand the exam time out because they didn't have enough time, they felt, to have those discussions. So now we've taken a 10 or 15-minute appointment slot and doubled it, let's say. And so even if you drive patient revenue up, revenue per patient up with that model, you're still only getting half of the production, right? Because you've doubled your time slots and you just don't have enough time in the day. And a lot of it, I think, comes from what you're saying is that people just haven't empowered their technicians to handle some of those as much as they can handle in service to that patient before the doctor comes in. Do I got it right?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you look at it from how many extra techs do I need to be able to, let's say, see 6 patients an hour versus 4 patients an hour. So if I'm hiring an additional tech to allow me to see 6 instead of 4, then, and I'm, let's say, arbitrarily paying them, starting wage of, let's say, $20. I'm
Mhm.
just throwing a number out there.
Sure.
Minimum wage is not 20, it's less than that here, but let's just say I started them at 20. But now an extra 2 patients an hour versus the 20 an hour, but I'm, let's say, generating an additional $500 on those two patients.
Yeah.
Hiring that tech at 20 an hour makes perfect sense.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. So we started with two technicians and a receptionist when I bought the clinic. And in 5 years, we are at 5.5 staff members now, from basically almost double.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, some days that's not enough.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. The more support that I have, the less stressed that I am, but also the less stressed that everybody else is. And that's
Sure.
important because office morale also is going to drive growth.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's the way that I look at it. I'm a big numbers person, right? I always say that if optometry had failed, I would have gone and gotten my bachelor's in math, which was the backup plan. But I always look at it from a numbers perspective, right? I'm not a huge risk taker. I tend to be more risk averse, but at the same time, I recognize that some risks are necessary for growth, but I still move along in a cautious factor. So when I look at those things as an example, so during COVID, I saw a demonstrated need for expanding the dry eye clinic, but it was definitely a risk in terms of, okay, you just bought this clinic, you went into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Now you're being presented with this opportunity to buy a dry eye machine that's another over $100,000 and drive myself further in debt. And I looked at it as, how many patients do I need to convert a month to break even? That's all I could think of. I wasn't even thinking about the profit generation. I was just thinking about it like from a break even standpoint.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, do I believe in myself enough to know that, am I passionate enough about my treatment recommendation that I'm going to be able to convert? And the answer was 2 patients a month.
Oh,
And that was it.
wow. Okay.
And so I believed in that. I said, oh, 100%. Absolutely. I believe in the
Yeah.
product. I believe in the technology. And I believe in my passion for the recommendation. And when I say
Yeah.
that, I use the word recommendation because some people think that they're selling. I don't believe I'm selling. We are doctors and we're recommending. And so when you phrase it that way and you believe in the recommendations that you were providing as a doctor, it no longer, it didn't become difficult for me to convince myself that 2 patients was not going to be difficult at all. And fast forward 5 years, almost 6 years later of owning that piece of equipment, we do an average of 10 to 15 a week.
Okay. I think you hit something really important there, which should be again, a no-brainer, but I think some people we're all human, right? And we get caught up in the sales pitch and the revenue potential of whether it's a dry eye machine or any other like specialty service, because they all come with some fairly large capital requirements that you need to put in up front and be tied to for a number of years. And when I heard what you were considering there, you're talking about the math, but you're also talking about your belief and your passion for, as you put it, that recommendation. I think that's crucial because been on the backside of some of these decisions where people had come to me and said, we've got this payment, but we got a payment for a machine that we're not really fully utilizing. And now when people ask me about that, and usually they're coming to me for the numbers aspect of it, but I'm always putting in that, are you really truly passionate about this level of service or this type of service? Do you believe in it? And is it something that you see yourself being excited to offer? Because without that element, you've got a piece of furniture that's collecting dust essentially, and money's going out the door, and you're going to get frustrated with it.
Absolutely. I think if you don't have a sense of purpose in what you're doing, that's going to show. There's something to be said about the energy and vibe that an individual emits, and then take that one step further. As a doctor, having that passion and that empathy for what you do, and then having it be personal is what is going to drive the success. So if you look at it from that aspect in terms of, I'm passionate about this because I know that it's going to be something that is going to make a change, that should always be the forefront of anything that we do in a healthcare space, in my opinion. The finances are great. They're always a bonus to be able to be financially successful. But I
Yeah.
think the main driver should be Are you passionate about this? Is it providing you with a sense of purpose? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, at the end of the day, money comes and goes. If you keep that passion for what you're doing, the finances will flow.
It's not entirely different than stepping outside of the medical space. And when different people there talk about sales, like selling any product or service, you have to believe in it. You have to have knowledge, you have to know it inside and out in order to be the best salesperson. And even though you all aren't salespeople in that same sense, you do still need to quote unquote sell these concepts to your patients, not in a sleazy way. And I don't think salespeople in general are sleazy. There's bad people in every industry, but you're presenting it to them in a way that's going to be in their best interest if they're a fit for that treatment or option or whatever. You have to, I agree with you. It is a core driver. You have to believe in what you're doing, no matter what it is that you're doing, right? If it's optometry, ophthalmology, accounting, advisory services, whatever it is. If you're selling a widget of any sort, your belief has to be the predominant factor in deciding where you're going, because otherwise you're gonna more than likely fail or at least stay stagnant. I call it, you can either fail, or I usually refer to it as slowly failing, where you're just barely clinging on and making ends meet for a number of years, but you're not escalating or evolving because you may be doing the wrong thing, or you may just not be as convicted or passionate about it as what you thought, or somehow that's not showing through.
Yeah, and you know what? For some people, if they want to stay in terms of a status quo and do things the way that they've always done them and be resistant to affecting that change within their practices, within their clinics, or within even their personal lives to expand and grow, then that's their prerogative in terms of that. But I think that if you are looking to grow and expand, to start with the passion is what will ultimately unleash this fire within you to want to do more and be more and grow.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. So it sounds like for you, based off of how you've built your practice, earlier we were talking about empowering your technicians and how you structure your appointment slots. That seems to lend itself to some good boundary setting for separating out. I don't usually use the term balance, but separating out and keeping your personal life in harmony with your business life, because a lot of times those things will clash and we get overworked. And so then that has a definite impact on our personal life. Sometimes it's the other way around. But can you speak to that a little bit about how this structure has helped? If it has, just assuming here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it sounds like it's helped you set up some good boundaries so you have some good harmony between the two sides of your life.
And it's funny because I was asked a few years ago on a podcast about how do I balance it all? And my answer was I don't.
Yeah.
It's not a balance, it's a trade-off. I do think I've gotten a little bit better at balancing in the sense of things have become more efficient, where I can go on vacation for a couple of weeks and the practice still runs
Yeah.
and things are
Yeah.
still okay. However, I think that I still continue to think that there's really no true balance.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of accepting a trade-off and being okay with that trade-off. As an example, not being in clinic because I chose to do school drop-off. Therefore, I'm seeing a couple of less patients.
Hmm.
Or going to their school assembly and closing off an afternoon. Now I'm seeing less patients, right? And there's reshifting and restructuring. And that's just kind of something that, before I used to think, oh my God, I'm dropping revenue, this and that. It's things are not going to be okay. And then I just got to a point where I was like, there will always be enough to go around. And it's a trade-off. Like these moments, I have two children. They're 13 and almost 11,
Hmm.
and I've raised them by myself pretty much all their lives. And so as they get older, I find that there's more time that they demand from me. And so then I've learned that there's certain things that I have to be okay with, let's say, not doing right now in terms of an exponential growth or expansion, as at this point in time, my attention needs to be directed on them. And then when I see that they're getting to a place where they're more self-sufficient, more independent, then I take that opportunity to ramp up. So I look at it as a trade-off. I look at it
Yeah.
as, you know what, like I've built this clinic to a point where I can see 22 patients in a day. Like Monday and Tuesday are my medical days. And then Wednesday and Thursday are my full dry eye days. And then as a result, I've been able to afford myself the luxury of not being in clinic on Fridays.
Mm.
So I guess there's that part to it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, if I look at the schedule and it's, oh my God, Dr. Taji, you're booked out 3 weeks in advance, I don't like that. So then I open up a Friday.
Yeah.
So I like teeter totter. But at the same time, if I see that my kids they've got a PA day on a Friday and they're off from school, it's no, we're not coming in. I'm spending that day with the kids. So it's more of a trade-off than a balance, I would say. And it's
Yeah.
learning to accept that trade-off. And I think
Mhm.
any parent will tell you that the balance is not real, the trade-off is. And
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
leaning in and accepting that trade-off. So I
Yeah,
hope that answered your question.
no, that's great because yeah, I don't use the term balance either because I agree with you. I don't think that truly exists. Balance by definition means that I'm going to spend equal parts, and that's just not going to happen. We're going to have different seasons of life as we go through, and even just different parts of the year, talking about where personal demand on our time is higher at certain times and business demand is higher at other times. And when that business demand is higher, we have to assess it and determine, is this like a core thing that's going to really impact the business, or can I make this up down the road? Is this just a temporary trade-off, or is it something that's going to
Exactly.
impact the core of our existence, which those things don't come up too often.
Yeah. But it's definitely, I think practice ownership is not for the faint of heart. It
Mhm.
definitely is, it's got its trials and tribulations in terms of navigating also all different types of personalities, right? I think is one of the
Mhm.
most challenging things. Understanding that people have different perspectives, your staff, the doctors that work for you, understanding that everybody has different styles and recognizing that and being cognizant and aware of that. But also, the most important thing I think is recognizing to be considerate and empathetic of your staff and doctors, because at the end of the day, they are also the ones that are going to help lift you up and help you grow. And so nobody can do this alone. And so I tend to often rely greatly on my doctors when I'm traveling or lecturing or needing to go. And then they're there to pick up the slack.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That's great advice and great insight into that whole concept, right? So I think that a big overarching takeaway from that is just knowing that the true balance doesn't exist. I like your term, the trade-off, and just knowing that things are going to be out of balance, but that's okay. And it can be by design, right? And things will work out in the end if you come in with that type of mindset. But if you're coming in thinking that you always need to be balanced, then that's a recipe for failure out the gate with that concept. So very good. I know we're running over time and I want to be respectful of yours because I know you've had a long day. Let me just skip to, there's a question I ask everybody, and maybe it's at the
Absolutely.
end, and maybe it's something that we've already mentioned or just want to reiterate or elaborate on, but maybe something brand new will pop up in your mind. But I ask about your best piece of advice you'd give to other practice owners who are not just looking to survive, but truly thrive in the industry.
Oh, that's a very good question. So I think that I'll take it back to finding your sense of purpose. Find your sense of purpose within your practice and then go from there.
Yeah.
So if you go back to why you got into this profession in the beginning, whether it was because the first time someone put lenses in front of your eyes, you saw amazing, or you got fitted with contacts for the first time, or you had to do sports vision therapy for a sport in school, or whatever it is, figure out what it is that ignited your sense of purpose and your passion for this profession, and then build from there. And if you've been doing this for many years and you just starting to feel burnt out and whatnot, just try to go back to that. And I think from the sense of purpose, you can only build up from there. So,
That's great. That's great advice. And I especially love how you're tying it back to that that initial feeling or the initial experience that we may have felt interacting with a professional, with an eye doctor or an ophthalmologist. This is going to stick with me for just like 90 seconds because
Yeah,
this is going to seem like a long thing, but I'm going to bring it full circle because so I don't know if you noticed, but there's like a whole huge
a
stack of
bunch of
playing
cards.
cards behind me.
Yes.
And the reason I have those up there is because I'm an amateur magician. So it's not gambling problem, it's amateur magician. And that is something that after you show somebody, sorry, let me take a step back further. Once you first see an effect, like a magic illusion or a trick or anything, and you get a sense of wonderment, that's how most people pick out what tricks they want to learn, right? Because somebody showed it to them and it was amazing and it blew their mind and they got this pure sense of joy and being fooled and it was entertaining. And then after you get to do it, you learn the secret. So it loses a little bit of luster after you get through the technical aspect of it. And then you have to practice it probably hundreds, if not thousands of times. And then you start showing it to hundreds, if not thousands of people, depending on your level. You start to forget that initial feeling you had when you first, and doing that over and over, like that repetition, right? It's like
Mhm.
you forget that initial feeling that you had, especially because you're so embedded into the secret and it becomes more about the secret or the technical aspects of your day to day. That's why I'm drawing this back around to, and you forget about the true fact that this isn't just a job that you've chosen, or it's not just a place that you got to show up to every day, but you're making real changes in real people's lives and they're amazed. Like what you do for them is magic because they don't know how to do it for themselves. They don't have the answers. And that's why they're looking to you. And it's a magical thing to walk out with the ability to be able to see better or enjoy life better because they've got their conditions under control, whatever it is.
Beautiful
That's
analogy.
fantastic.
Beautiful analogy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time and going a little bit over. So I appreciate you, Raina. Thank you so much. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. If there's ways that people can want to connect and reach out, what's the best way to find you?
So I am on LinkedIn. They can reach out through LinkedIn.
Sure.
Instagram is just EYEDRTAJI. My email is Dr. Taji, DRTAJI at torontomedi.ca. Thank you so much for having me. It was truly an honor.
Yeah, thank you as well. All right, you have a great day, and hopefully our paths will cross again sometime.
Thank you.